It's Talk Back with Matthew Dunn and Jim Leggett, Central Louisiana's longest-running talk show. Call 442-8255, 442-TALK. Whether it's the guests or the calls, Talk Back is where Central Louisiana begins its conversation.
Hour number 2 coming to you live here on Talk Back with Matthew Dunn and Jim Leggett on KSYL 970 AM 104.9 FM. And we appreciate all of you out there for listening. And it's one of our favorite hours of the entire month. It's a chance for us to talk about everything going on north of the river with our dear friend, Pineville Mayor Clarence Fields. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning. Happy New Year, by the way.
Happy New Year to you. Happy belated New Year and belated Merry Christmas to you and your family. You told me you spent a lot of time with the grandkids.
Oh, yeah.
How was the holiday season?
It was very good. Our grandkids are up in Minneapolis, Minnesota, so it's a ways off. But the weather was cooperative, and we got lucky too because 2 days after we left. The temperature got where it normally would be this time of the year, and also blizzard. So we were lucky, but we enjoyed the heck out of it.
How in the world did your family, and I'm sure that there are career reasons and so on and so forth, of all places to live? You got Texas or Georgia or something like that. They end up in Minnesota.
But thanks to Clarence Jr. And you're right. But speaking of Texas, because it actually all started here, and then it kind of went through Beaumont, and then on to Austin, and then how in the world you end up in Minneapolis, Minnesota after living in those places, and then here comes the grandkids up there.
They probably have the reverse situation that when they look at their power bills in the wintertime, it's sky high, but in the summertime, it's just easy going.
Yeah, they're pretty easy going. It's like the weather doesn't bother them, and we've gotten used to it, to be very honest with you. Even to one point, my Rosa scared me because she talked about potentially going up there and being with the grandkids. I'm going, I can't see moving to Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Now, well, I tell you what you would get if you'd move up there, and I'm sure you know this from your son, but if you'd move up there whenever you guys do decide to retire, if you move up there during the summertime, you'd have some of the best fishing in the
absolutely.
world.
Yeah, we've been there, done that. We've had that opportunity, but it's those times when I can't do that is what bothers me.
Right.
So, no, it's a fun place. It really is.
Well, you talked about weather. That obviously has a lot to do with where we're going to start. But first, let's take a phone call. Good morning. You're on with Mayor Clarence Fields.
Good morning, Mayor. Good morning, Mr. Matt. How are you?
Good morning. How
Good
are
morning,
you?
Larry? How are you?
Doing great.
Good.
Mayor, don't forget about your kinfolks at McNeely Crossing now.
I won't do that. Actually, I was scheduled, and I didn't get the opportunity to come up there January the 1st, for New Year's, and did not get the opportunity to come up to my sisters and everything because we got a little busy and some other things were going on. But not going to forget. Not going to forget, Larry.
Okay, well, we got to make a little progress on a drainage problem that's kind of affects Queenie as much as it does her next door neighbor and myself. So look like we're making progress on it, and give her some relief, and she won't be worried about the sandbags no more.
Yeah, exactly. I did actually spend Christmas Day up there, but we were around at my mother's in downtown Colfax, and of course she was there also. So I did get to spend a little bit of time.
Great. Thank y'all. Have a great day.
Okay.
Thank you, Larry. 442-8255. Yeah. To all of our friends, and obviously we know this hour is all about Pineville, but to all of our friends up in Grant Parish very quietly has had some significant flooding.
Oh, absolutely.
Particularly in the river areas up there. And so our thoughts and our support goes out to you. And not saying that it's become a dire situation, but certainly you're in some emergency flooded areas and things like that. So thoughts up to Grant Parish. Mayor, let's start there. We were talking a little bit off air about the rain that we've had in December, and I think I saw somewhere it was the wettest December in Louisiana history. With that said, you said, look, the waters have stopped, but now we're dealing with the after effects. Can you kind of start there? Yeah.
Of course, unfortunately, the rains that we got and the last significant rains that we got were, thank God that they came in over a couple of days and not in an hour, which normally, happened a couple of weeks ago. And obviously that creates all kinds of other problems. But we sometimes tend to forget. And I watch the levels of the rivers, particularly the Red River, because now you potentially have to deal with with backwater, and backwater has some impact. And unfortunately, when you talk about backwater, it generally, when you start getting backwater, it comes up and it stays up a while. And we've got a few areas that we have to pay very close attention to when it comes to backwater. The Wardville area, obviously, that impacts Roe Gully, and then you have some impact on the park. The park, obviously, over at Beulah Lake, behind Beulah Lake, it's actually closed. It's been closed, I think, for a couple of weeks now. You have no access to it because of the water coming off of the river. But you'll see some backwater. Any significant rain that we get, here in the next few weeks, obviously will have more of an impact or whatever. And then also, depending on how they operate the lock and the dam, that could also have an impact. But so far, so good, and we'll just monitor that. It's some things that we have to do relative to our Lake Beulah, how we operate it. And when I say how we operate it, how we open and close gates and things of that nature. All of those things play a very important part in trying to, as much as we possibly can, relieve the pressure of, when you get this kind of rain, and also when you get backwater, and, try to minimize flooding as much as you possibly can.
How much does that strain your public works department with all the things that they're responsible for? And once again, having the comparison of growing up in a household where someone led a municipality, things like, people don't really think about things like that, but I would assume a lot of overtime is probably going on. Is that correct?
Lots of overtime, lots of monitoring. You can imagine those folks when these rains start. It's not like you go home at 4:00. We have some people. We have a couple pumping stations that once it starts raining, then we have someone stationed at those pumping stations, around the clock. So, and then you literally, for the most part, it's not someone sitting in an office monitoring what the weather's going to do. It's everybody trying to monitor what the weather, some of the small things that may seem small, trying to keep catch basins clear of any debris and things of that nature. Unfortunately, this time of the year with leaves falling and debris, people have the tendency to, those leaves ends up in drainage ditches, and that causes all kinds of other problems. So, they shift into a total another gear when it comes to drainage, and it's pretty much around the clock situation, and this time of the year, and just monitoring everything as much as you possibly can. But you can't as much as they can monitor things, and as much as they can possibly do, depending on how those rains come, whether they come fast in an hour or over an extended period of time of a couple of days, that makes all the difference in the world.
Well, let's continue to talk about something that involves let's just say fluid or liquid. And last time we talked to you, you guys I don't want to say you guys, but the citizens of Pineville obviously voted the way that they voted. And we got the immediate reaction. Now you've had a chance to get through the holiday season. And, of course, we said this word a lot back in December. Well, after the first of the year, you guys will look at this. After the first of the year, you guys will look at that. What is the next phase in actual implementation with alcohol?
The next phase, as far as, and I gave you a copy of the agenda, and obviously you'll see a lot of it starts with item number 16 on the agenda, and this big word they call promulgation of alcohol election results. I call it ratification.
Very fancy word. Yeah.
But there's a process. Matter of fact, as of today, January the 8th, if you remember, the election was held on December the 8th. Now, 30 days later here on January the 8th, this is the last day that someone can potentially contest the election itself, not the results, but the election itself. Now, what the council does is that at this evening's city council meeting at 6 p.m., the council will ratify literally the results of the election, and then you have another 30-day period where someone would want to contest the results of the election itself relative to the numbers and all of the above. Then they have 30 days to do that, into 30 days from this date, January the 8th, up to February the 8th. So it's just it's a process. A lot of people think that, it happens, it's voted on, it's a done deal, and
the next day, Jack Daniels in the store.
No, that's not the case whatsoever. So that's what's going on as we speak, and what will go on tonight. But then also at the same time, we've been working on something, and I'll be very honest with you. We were not that we were naive, but there's so much more to this than because now we have to create an ordinance relative to the alcohol sales in the city of Pineville, particularly with all 5 measures of proposition having passed. We have to create an ordinance that will relate to each one of those, and then with that comes, it's not easy as the application process and all the above. We're not at that point yet until we get the ordinance in place and everything as to what actually is going to happen. And that a lot of discussions will happen over the next 30 days. I can tell you, we met with our city attorney for almost 3 hours on last week, looking at the fine points of the ordinance, and then you got council members who have the opportunity, and they have in hand the proposed ordinance or a draft of the ordinance. So they'll have 30 days to look at the finer points of it, and also, their take on certain sections of it, whether it may be the hours of operation. As you well know, sometimes different municipalities or different parishes have hours of operation can differ from here to there, or Sunday sales, things of that nature. So that's just a few of the things that has to be addressed.
Yeah, I'll leave off with a famous there was a movie with Robert Redford in the early 1970s called The Candidate, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And about him running for the U.S. Senate in California. And they go through the entire election. The whole movie is nothing but the election, okay? And then right at the end, he wins. And they're sitting in the limo with him and his campaign advisor. And he turns to his campaign advisor and he goes, "So now what?"
Yeah, I talk about being maybe a little bit naive. You really, when things like this or something of this nature is progressing, and then all of a sudden it gets to a point where it's done. You don't realize what all has to go into it according to the law and all the above. It's a lot. It can be overwhelming if you're not careful. It literally can put a hold on all of the other things that you're working on. But for instance, for us, we're beginning the process of starting to look at mid-year here, going into the 7th month of our budget year, beginning to look at our budget and where we are and the worries we have there and all the above. But in the midst of that, then you've got this, and you literally have to put something to the side and work on getting this in place. So it's going to be interesting how this all eventually unfolds.
So I hate to put your feet to the fire on an actual date,
mm-hmm.
but if someone wants to go and buy a bottle of Crown Royal in Walmart,
mm-hmm.
okay, when do you think an approximate time period would be that they can go do that?
I'm going to say I always I hate giving dates, but I'm going to say potentially April. I could say March, but I'm going to say April. Okay, here's the process that has to get accomplished. One, a lot of people do not realize we have the task of having to appoint, which will be confirmed by the city council, what's called the ABC board. That is the board or the commission that actually looks at the application, goes through the process of background checks and making sure those who are applying for licensing or permits or whatever, that they're legit and that they meet all of the criteria and all the above. So now we have to appoint that 5-member commission or 5-member board. That's very difficult. Yeah, one of the things that people may not realize, some do, we have difficulty finding people who want to serve on committees and on boards and all the above. And like other municipalities now, because of all of the, I guess you could say, the ethics rules and particularly the personal financing reporting that you have to do. And a lot of people do not want to serve on boards that, one, they're not getting paid for, that they're volunteering on. And you got to disclose all of, in some cases, your financial information personally, as well as your spouses or whatever it may be. So it makes it difficult finding someone to serve on these boards. And also it makes it difficult because, there's so many other things. Most of them are volunteer. Rarely do we have any boards that pay anything of that nature or whatever. They're time consuming. This ABC commission at the beginning of this process, because of what's probably going to happen when you have the applicants like let's say the Walmarts, the Super Ones, the convenience stores, the others who are interested in now taking advantage of the alcohol sales. Now you have to go through the process of approving all of those application background checks and all of that.
Yeah, back to what you were saying, and that's a far bigger issue than just in Pineville too, about serving on boards. And there's been numerous studies done, particularly in the last couple of years, about why aren't better people running for public office and things like that. And the fact is we've gotten so personal. I mean, God forbid you and your wife got in a disagreement and it was seen in public or something, 20 years ago, and it becomes I guess an anvil on your campaign. It's things like that, along with serving on boards voluntarily, has become a big issue.
As a mayor, it depends on whether you are serving on a board or serving on the city council as a mayor or as a representative or as the governor, whatever it may be. Well, I say the governor, it's a little bit different there, but it's unfortunate that I have to every single year fill out a financial disclosure form, along with my wife has to be included on that also, and her financial business and all the above. Yeah. So it's you talk about people get to see your personal life. They get to see your personal life.
Yeah, one of the things that I think surprised relatively earlier in their marriage, when my mother and Ned, this was sometime in the mid 1990s, relatively early in their marriage. Yeah, we wake up, I'm getting ready for school or whatever it is. We look on the front page of the Town Talk. There's our house with our utility bill.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
It's
public record.
It's gotten pretty crazy. But anyway, that's for another discussion another time. We're due for our first break. When we come back, we'll get into some other issues going on, as well as your phone calls. Don't be shy. Give the mayor a call, 442-8255.
You're listening to Talkback 970 with Matthew Dunn and Jim Leggett, broadcasting live from the Kinetics Technologies studio. You're listening to Talkback on KSYL 970 AM and 104.9 FM. You can join the conversation by calling 442-8255. That's 442-TALK.
Back here on a Tuesday edition of Talkback. It's the 8th of January, as we are thrilled and honored to be joined by Pineville Mayor Clarence Fields. Spent a lot of the first segment there, the first extended segment, talking about, occasionally, even when you talk for a living, you still get tongue-tied, Mayor. But anyway, you occasionally get long about certain things that are going on, but certainly we wanted to address some of the flooding issues, the backwater with all the rains that we've had, and then, of course, the other big story from last month involving the passage of the sale of alcohol. There's also some annexations going on tonight that are a part of the agenda. Can you talk about those?
Yeah, there's several annexations. To be very factual, there are 4 of them that are related to the sales of alcohol. And we expected this, and there probably will be more. There are 4 items on the agenda relative to the introduction for a petition of annexation of different properties. One of those properties, for the viewers or for the listeners to know, is 3128 Highway 28 East, and that is Smoker's Paradise. That is across diagonally across from Super One on Highway 28 East, or another reference point is to the left of Red River Bank. So they are obviously petitioning to be annexed into the city limits, because obviously currently that particular location has been outside of the corporate limits, so it's had the opportunity to sell low content alcohol beer at Smoker's Paradise. But now, obviously, with this election, they would like to be annexed into the city limits.
So, real quick here with Smoker's Paradise, because I know where that is.
Yeah.
How would that? So, what's their mailing address? Ball, or what is?
No. This is on 28 East, Highway 28 East. I got you. Yeah, this is this is right past Super One and the Sonic,
and I still know where it is. I got my roads confused up.
But let me remind our listeners too, in this process now of annexation and the influx of individuals, businesses, or whatever that now want to be annexed into the corporate limits because of the laws having been changed by the voters relative to alcohol sales. We're still going to be very mindful and very, I don't want to say picky, but we spent a lot of time over the last several years in the annexation process to try to, as best we possibly can, because our city limits were so fragmented, for lack of better words, to kind of enclose that a bit and make it more feasible for us who provide the services. So just because we've had some interest from folks way out past Paper Mill Cutoff Road who have want to come into the corporate limits, or some right past Village Green and wants to come into the corporate limits for the purpose of selling alcohol. I can tell you now, if you're not contiguous to or touching, for lack of better words, parts of our corporate limits, the odds are you coming into the city limits are probably, and being annexed, is probably not going to happen, because it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense from a standpoint of providing services when it comes to police protection, fire protection, and all the above. So we're going to be very cautious, and it's not about the dollar. It's about what makes sense and what's the right thing to do. So
yeah, you guys can't be you guys can't have a Hawaii and Alaska situation going on to where you've got portions of the city that are not touching the actual city.
We spent too much time trying to clean that up because it's created problems, and it, particularly for public safety folks, it really creates problems. But these properties that are petitioning for an annexation pretty much meet, I guess you could say what we require as far as potentially coming into our corporate limits. Another one is 3300 Highway 28 East. 3300 Highway 28 East is the people will recognize it as a Conoco station, which is to the right of, I guess you could say, the bar and grill, which is currently out there. But it's on Highway 28 East on the right-hand side going out. So that's another one that makes sense. It's right up from Meadowdale subdivision. Then you also have 2675 Donahue Ferry Road. A lot of people know it as a pit stop, and that's at the corner of Edgewood and Donahue Ferry Road. So they are petitioning to come into our corporate limits. And by the way, in this process also, there's some other things that has to be met when it comes to water, sewer, things of that nature, whether we are able to provide those kinds of services if they do not possess them, particularly sewer, not necessarily water. But most of them, all of these literally, except one, are already on our water system, by the way, where people will know that. And then the other one is 3595 Highway 28 East. That is going to be on the corner of, I call Staley Road, across in the corner of Staley Road. Now it is, I think, an Exxon station. It used to be a Circle K. So they are petitioning to come into corporate limits. For another reference point, it is J.I. Barron is on the backside off of Trinity Church Road. So, that's a location that's been there for quite some time. So there's a lot of different scenarios there when it comes to that. And we expect more. We really do. But here again, we will not necessarily pick and choose, but we're going to make sure that they meet the criteria of one to come into our corporate limits. And it'll be interesting.
We had a gentleman by the name of Brad ask, Mayor, I've heard on this show and elsewhere about land in Pineville, and he essentially, to wrap up, he's kind of long what he writes, but he asked why Tioga can't be a part of Pineville. And we've been asked that too, to be quite honest with you. Hey, why is Tioga its own deal? Why can't they still have their high school out there and all of those things, but be annexed into Pineville?
Okay, I'll be glad to answer that. We would love to, but when you look at, when you heard and people hear me talk about services and things of that nature, and then when you talk about the tax base or whatever, there's some places out on Highway 28 East, just outside of Pineville, that people want to be in the corporate limits, but the problem with that, again, is can we provide the services? Is the tax base there for us to be able to provide fire protection? And what comes with fire protection, equipment and people, fire stations? Can we provide police protection? And you have to increase your police departments as far as personnel is concerned, and some other things that you have to do. Can we provide sanitation services, trash services? Then you have to go buy, trucks and other equipment and all the above. So you have to make the decision. Can you afford to do it? And likewise, can people afford to pay to come into the corporate limits? And right now, I don't see that. Let alone talking about water and sewer. Of course, Tioga has water district number 3.
They're on septic tanks out there, aren't they?
Well,
I
think so. A lot of them are, but here again, then you have to deal. And we're talking about mega dollars when you talk about trying to tie in communities, which and those communities need to be and would love to be, but the cost in tying into the communities, sewer system is just astronomical, and it has to come to a point where people have to understand they're the ones that has to pay for that. The city just can't, just build infrastructure, and the money has to come from somewhere. It's all about that,
It's funny how we can talk about black and white,
yeah.
but really green is the real black and white. That's when I say black and white, by the way, I'm talking about cut and dry, essentially.
I'll be to the point blank, because I talk about this to people all the time about, and these are things that we have to look at. When you look at the millages that, that we pay here in Pineville, that we pay in Alexandria and Central Louisiana, I go to Texas. I always use Texas as an example. You drive across the state line into Texas, and we want to also believe that we as an administration, as elected official, have been very mindful of the taxpayers' dollars. But there's not a lot of the taxpayers' dollars there. Mm-hmm. But you drive into Texas, and people say, well, they're always working on roads, and then you driving into communities in Texas, and there's new schools, and there's new infrastructure, and then you have the voters who vote to build a $70.3 million high school football stadium in Katy, Texas. That's how they do it. Because people are paying for it, and we have to get to that point where, unfortunately, the money's not dropping out of the sky. And and we provide the best of the best, we believe, when we talk about the services that we provide, but the cost is not going down; it's going upward.
Let's go ahead and take another break. When we come back, we'll continue the discussion. But also, and as I lost my train of thought, Mayor. We want to talk about, there's some implementation that you wanted to discuss a little bit. I know you were looking at there, but anyway, a lot more. We're going to continue the discussion as well as your phone calls. We'll be right back with Pineville Mayor Clarence Fields.
You can join the conversation by calling 442-8255. That's 442-TALK. You're listening to Talk Back on KSYL 970 AM and 104.9 FM.
All right, so I was telling you off the air, right when we went to break, I, of course, remembered what I wanted to discuss. Right. And I wanted to ask you, because this has been a heavy topic of conversation the last 2 days on the show. Talked a little bit about it with Rod in the first hour. We always talk about restaurants. It's one of the hottest topics that people talk about, as I see you smiling over there. The economy in general. Now, I tried to warn people, to caution them that just because X, Y, or Z restaurant or restaurants, plural, close, that doesn't mean that the economy is going to hell in a handbasket. But certainly there is some cause for a little bit of concern. Over in your municipality, Rib Fins obviously just shut their door. By the way, and I do a lot of business over in Pineville, I don't know what it is about that location, but it somewhat seems cursed. But I still think that if the right business went in there and did the right thing, they could thrive in that building, because it's a nice center. But as you kind of nod your head. But that being said, your overall assessment of the economy in the city of Pineville.
My overall assessment, I have to look at I have to look at the financial side from Pineville. I caution people. Our sales tax have been down. We're 6 months into this budget year. Our sales tax have been down 5 of the 6 months. Okay, the very first month of this budget year, which was July, and our budget year obviously fiscal runs from July to June. Our sales tax was up a couple percentage points. Every month since then, our sales tax have been down. Of course, the question is why. One thing personally, I think some of it has to do with the feel from the national level. One, the uncertainty and all the above from the national level. Obviously, the stock is up and down. Nobody knows what to do, what kind of decisions to make. As far as capital, I don't think there's a lot of people that want to invest capital. And I go back to the point of, we talk to people all the time. And they tell us, we need to have this, we need to have that. and also tell people, and I'm pretty point blank about this sometimes now, and that there's certain things that you're not going to get in this community because we just do not have the support mechanism when it comes to we're not Lafayette, we're not Baton Rouge, and you know, the median income also plays a very important part of whatever. But I don't think people. And then I talked to someone at church, by the way, on Sunday, who mentioned something to me that said that, you know, we don't realize a lot of times some of the layoffs that are happening around us, we don't hear about them, and they're happening for a reason. I know of a small company that laid off 18 people in December. And that's because of the slowdown of the economy. I heard Rod earlier talking about residential development and all the above. I think he's right. You know, we have some openings relative to, we have 3 or 4 subdivisions that are still not completely full yet, but it's new subdivisions coming out of the ground. I don't see that in 2019. I don't see people doing a whole lot of things in 2019 because of the uncertainty of the economy. Right now, I think the big thing is to try to hold on to what you have.
Good. Well said.
You talked about rib fin. We're in all. No, we're frustrated relative to restaurants, you know, locating here and things. But, you know, we also understand there are some that are looking, but they're not the ones that you want to look. But at this point, those are the ones of fast foods, and nothing against fast foods, but those are the ones who are looking more so than a fine dining restaurant or something of that nature or whatever, because they're not going to invest into anything right now.
I'll ask you this question to kind of wrap up the subject. And I asked Rod this question, and I posed it to the audience yesterday. Is it a timing thing, too? And what I mean by that is not saying that restaurants can't be successful here, but I'm not so sure that other than Friday or Saturday night, a lot of people have time to go out and eat. And it's like I equated it to the movie business, okay? People are seeing less movies in movie theaters. Not that movie theaters aren't still doing pretty good, but you have seen a few of them around the country shut their doors because a lot of times people can't just go and disconnect in a dark theater for 2 hours or 2.5 hours.
That's interesting you talk about movie theaters because Rosa a few weeks ago wanted to go to the movies, and there was a certain movie that was supposedly out of yet she wanted to see. So she calls to get tickets, and the movie is not here. The movie's not here because this market probably can't support that movie. Right. You know, that's how that works. Unfortunately, we have to be sitting in that bubble or whatever you want to call it. But you're right. A lot of it has to do with, you know, maybe Friday, Saturdays, and or Sundays is booming. Yeah. But Monday through Thursday or whatever, it's a period. We're a different community. And we got to recognize that.
Here's a good, and we'll go to break after this. But here's a good example. So I'm 32. I'm not married, and I don't have kids. I don't even go out to eat on weeknights. Very rarely.
That is incredible.
So when you're a family and you got kids in school and dad and mom get off of work, I don't want to say that fast food's the best option, but when you've got Waiter, that'll deliver food. Now, hopefully Waiter has injected some money into restaurants that where butts might not be in the seats, so that doesn't help the wait staff there. But at least people are buying food from those restaurants. We got a break, Mayor. We'll come right back.
970 AM, 104.9 FM, KSYL. Back to the conversation of Talkback. You're welcome to join in by calling 442-8255. That's 442-TALK. You're listening to Talkback on KSYL 970 AM and 104.9 FM.
Back here with Pineville Mayor Clarence Fields. Mayor, I'd be remiss, and then I'll let you finish up with your notes, but I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about what's going on in a very close neighboring municipality in the town of Ball. Obviously, you're not oblivious to the news of everything going on there. I know you can't really, I guess, add much to the situation, but your perspective as the nearest municipality to the town of Ball.
Well, you know, it's interesting. I was having some conversation with John Gallagher yesterday. He was by the office. John Gallagher is the executive director of our Louisiana Municipal Association. Obviously, this is a very unique situation involved in Mayor Kavanaugh and Mayor-elect Hebron. And then this law comes up that's voted on relative to that constitutional amendment that really kind of, changed the the outlook on this whole thing. Literally, it has to be decided by the courts. Obviously, one court has already decided it has given an opinion, and now it has to go further than that. I was listening to Attorney Charles Elliott talk, I think on last week or whenever it was, about this situation and everything. Yeah, here again, all we can do as the city of Pineville, like we've done before, we like Alexandria, Ball is our neighbor, and we'll have the opportunity to work with whatever is eventually decided or whatever. It would be for me to give my opinion on what I think about what should happen or how it should be. It's totally inappropriate because I'm not obviously I'm not a judge, I'm not an attorney or whatever. There's a law out there. How does that law now apply and all the above? But I can tell you how whatever unfolds, and I hope it unfolds very quickly, where we can all get back to business and we can all be neighbors. Whatever unfolds, we're going to work hand in hand with Ball, Louisiana, like we always have.
Yeah, it's a really weird, unique, dare I say, awkward situation because there is no, and I'm sure somewhere in the country there is, but there's not a real precedence for this. You can't look this up in a book and say, okay, well, Johnsonville, Tennessee did this, so that's what we need to do. Yeah,
in other words, there's no, what a case law,
right?
For lack of better words on it. But I guess to some extent or whatever, I'm beginning to feel like I don't know whether I'm old or a veteran at this or whatever, because I've had the opportunity to obviously work with former mayor or mayor like Roy Hebron before, and now with obviously Mayor Kavanaugh, and now you just have to sit back and wait and see what the outcome is going to be as to who you get the opportunity to work with.
Going to be very interesting to see. Going to take our final break. When we come back, we'll let the mayor tell you about everything coming up in the month of January in Pineville.
970 AM, 104.9 FM, KSYL. You're listening to Talk Back on KSYL 970 AM and 104.9 FM. You're welcome to join in by calling 442-8255. That's 442-TALK.
Final segment here with Pineville Mayor Clarence Fields for the first month of the year. And Mayor, I'll let you wrap up with your notes.
Okay. I want to talk about I think somebody messaged you about Huntington Ridge, Huntington Ridge subdivision. On the Saturday of the weekend of New Year's, we had a major water 6-inch line that was penetrated by a contractor for AT&T. AT&T is doing fiber optic work in Huntington Ridge. Kudos to those guys because it impacted, if I had the best guess, probably, or could have impacted probably 600-700 residents. Unfortunately, Huntington Ridge, ended up the water service being disrupted, literally shut off until they could get that water leak fixed. But they got it done in a timely manner. They done it in extreme, I guess you could say, conditions where, one, it was raining, it was cold, and all the above. But that's what's going on in Huntington Ridge, as well as some other places. What's interesting about Huntington Ridge, this is not the first time in the last few months in Huntington Ridge that, we've had a water leak because of a contractor penetrating a water line. And that's because Huntington Ridge is one of the oldest subdivisions in Pineville. And relative to, a lot of people have heard call before you dig. That is to get locates to locate various lines where you won't do just that. Unfortunately, the infrastructure relative to technology does not exist in Huntington Ridge. So the odds of potentially, doing some damage to a water line because, you've not located it or it's not where you located it and it wasn't there is a little bit more higher than it would be in some other places. So that's what's going on in Huntington Ridge. That's an AT&T project who has hired a contractor to come in and subcontract that out to do fiber optics in there.
1.5 minutes remain.
1.5 minutes remaining. Just a reminder, the one thing I haven't mentioned, City Council meeting tonight There's several issues on the city council meeting: introduction of petitions for annexation, the introduction of the ordinance for, obviously the alcohol sales, ratification to some extent. Other than that other word, promulgation of the election results. So
I'm gonna have to look up the old Webster's dictionary or go on Wikipedia for that one. Yeah.
I just said Mark Vilar is our city attorney.
Right.
Is there another word for that? That you could have used other than that, but by law, that's the word that you have to use. So
that's called government lingo, right there.
Just reminding people, also Sonic in Pineville is going through a massive renovation.
They're not closing.
Yeah, they're not closing. They're going through a massive renovation. That Sonic, by the way, as we all know, is one of the top Sonics, if not in the state, in the nation. And
of
they've
course
proven
it is.
that.
It's in Pineville.
It's in Pineville.
Right?
What can I say? So I just thought I'd mention that. So
and if you go there when they reopen, the mayor will be on roller skates delivering your food.
I can do that.
Yes. All right. Pineville Mayor Clarence Fields. God bless you, my man. We'll talk to you next month.
Thanks. Appreciate it, Pat.
And for Mayor Fields, I'm Matthew Dunn. This has been Talk Back on KSYL 970 AM 104.9 FM and KSYL.com. You missed any of Rod or Mayor Fields, give the podcast a shot later in the day. God bless everyone. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
You've been listening to Talk Back 970. The views expressed were those of the host and callers, and not necessarily those of Sinlaw Broadcasting.